Hey, what's up, and welcome to this episode of EST, the podcast for established church leaders by established church leaders. My name is Josh.
My name is Sam. And listeners, thank you for tuning in. We don't take that lightly at all. All of you we've got some people who've been listening from the very beginning, and it means a lot that people just tune in. And when you reach out, via Twitter or what have you, and hey, I was listening to this episode, and thanks for this. I mean, man, that really means a lot to me.
It does.
So it's always nice to hear from people who listen. So if that's you, hey, reach out to us.
Yep. We got a very practical episode today. We're going to talk about engaging the disengaged in your church. One way to start with that conversation is finding out who they are. You can do that through a church management software. We've got one of the very best around to tell you about. Our sponsor is Church Teams. You know
what? Your database is one of your greatest prospect lists.
It often is true. Yeah.
You know what? Hey, you know what my dad did back in the 80s when he was a pastor? He went to the Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Episcopal Church, and said, I'll trade you. I will give you all of my members who really aren't coming anymore, their information, and you give me theirs, and we'll each call all of them. I don't know that that's legal. In fact, it's probably not legal now. It may have been legal then. The spirit behind that was good, so I'm not recommending that. But what you can do is use your own, and the best way to put them all there is with Church Teams, church management software. Yeah. They do databases. We talk about their texting system and their check-in system, but their database is great too. I mean, just when you think of church management software, that's what you kind of think of. They do way more than that. But you should reach out to them. est.church is where you can get their free offer for a couple months, just to give a free trial, see what their software is like. They have really good customer service. So I am sure they would love talking to you about your needs and what they can do for you. So you can check out Church Teams at est.church. All right, let's define the disengaged. We're talking about engaging the disengaged. Who is a disengaged person?
Good place to start. So with these ones, we're talking about those within the church family. They are members of your church. They may have grown up in your church. Maybe at one point they were active, very involved, a small group leader, a deacon, a committee, etc. But through various situations, maybe during the interim between the previous leadership and you, maybe through some sort of conflict. Oftentimes, these are not people that you have some conflict with. They've just fallen out of the church. The previous church that I pastored, there was a large group of these that just got to the point of once their kids got to high school sort of area, they just stopped making their kids go. They disengaged. That all happened before I got there. But there was a very large group of disengaged people. So I wouldn't call these non-believers. They even will still tell folks your church is their church. They come on Christmas, Easter, they come other times, they celebrate the big things. They might even make a Facebook post about how happy they were, about the new whatever. But they're just not in the life of the church. So I don't know, Sam, let's come up with, 3 ways to engage the disengaged. What do you think?
Yeah, well, let's just start with the assumptions that we have of those who have disengaged. I walk into every conversation assuming positive things, meaning if I talk to them and, hey, well, haven't seen you in a while, would love to have you back, or hey, we've got this new thing going, you should really come to that. You don't even have to guilt people. You don't even have to use that language of, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. It could just be, I think you'd really enjoy this. I am going to assume that they're receptive. And when you start a conversation assuming that someone is receptive, it really changes your tone, your body language, and how you approach that person. So every conversation I have, I just assume positive first. Now, if they go to the negative, okay, I'll deal with that if they do. But just because this person hasn't been in church in 6 months, I'm not approaching them as if, hey, what's wrong?
Not hostile. Yeah, it's not an enemy.
Yeah, or even is something wrong? That can really put people on the defensive, even if they're, in a good place. And who knows what the story is? This is the thing. Go in, start a personal conversation with a positive tone.
Yeah, but let me add to this, and I think you'll probably agree with me, but with a true tone. So, one of the things that people will do is they may be looking for you to justify or to excuse behavior that we know is not true or good. So we know that it is not good for spiritual development or even for your walk with Christ to not be attending church, to not be involved in your small group, to not be serving. We know that's not true. And so sometimes they'll get into a conversation with us and they're looking for us to say things, small things like, oh, it's fine, or don't worry about it, or, everybody misses a few. And they're going to grasp onto those. So I would be very careful about. I'm with you, Sam. I do the same thing. I'm like, look, hey, you can get started this next week. If they're like, I know I haven't been there in a while, I would say, yeah, that's fine. But Sunday comes every other day, so I'll see you this Sunday, 9:30. You know where we're at, that kind of thing. But at the same time, if they're ever like, is it okay? I mean, I just feel kind of guilty about not being in church the last 6 months, and I'm like, it's not a great thing. It's probably hurting you in spiritual ways. And so I think you really need to get back into church. It's important. It matters. And so be truthful, be positive, and do not excuse. Do not condone what is not condonable.
Yeah, and train your people to do the same. So
right.
This goes from tone to culture, right? So you need to teach people how to communicate, how to listen well. And you need to, tell your first impressions people and your staff, if you have a staff, and you're calling. One of the things that I like to do when I first get to a church is just to, particularly if I'm a new pastor. It's been a while since I've been a new pastor. It's been 9 years. But I used to be a new pastor a lot. There was a season of my life where I made some transitions. I am an expert on being a new pastor.
That's funny.
But so it's been a while. But if I'm a new pastor, I just get out that database as we talked about before, and I give it to somebody, support team person, or somebody who knows people, a deacon, and just, hey, tell me all the people that haven't been. And I just start making phone calls. Hey, I'm the new pastor. Yeah. I'm just going through our membership list. Just wanted to introduce myself and invite you to church. If I'd love to get a chance to meet you face to face. Do you know how many? Yep. And if you're a larger church, let's say you've got 800 inactive people in your system, right? That's very common. And one way to approach that is, this angry ogre of regenerate church membership. Kick them off the rolls. We need to excommunicate people. Kick them out of the church. They're not faithful. You know what? Some of them may be unfaithful and not where they need to be, and some of them may need to be excommunicated. I've done that before. But more likely than not, they've just faded away. And for a lot of them, if you just reach out, gently encourage them, a lot of them will come back. And then the ones that don't, you can deal with the ones that don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's one of the reasons I think monthly newsletters are an easy kind of way just to get that little reminder, get people back in the habit. So I think that's good. You mentioned something. I think that's the first kind of suggestion I would do is face-to-face meetings or just phone calls, meeting with them. So make your list, go after them, chat with them, and then say, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, or you don't have to say that part, but just have a conversation with them. One of the things I like to approach is what got you connected to church, and tell me your story. I've done that a lot with people here. I don't really care if you're engaged or not engaged. I just want to hear everybody's story. And a lot of times that'll help you get to a point where they're going to tell you the reason they're disengaged, the reason that they are no longer a part of things. And you can minister in that space. Another tip is you've likely heard the story. You probably know from another perspective what happened during that. And so when somebody starts telling you, oh, well, I left because such and such committee made such and such decision, and they start telling you, and they'll say, do you know what happened? That kind of thing. I find that people always are rocked back on their heels. They don't know, do I lie and say, no, I don't know what happened? Or do I tell them, yes, I know what happened, and they'll feel like I'm talking about them? My response to that is always, let's pretend I don't. Just tell me from the beginning your side of it. And it really helps people kind of be at ease. So that's a little tip on how just say, let's pretend I don't. I just want to hear your perspective on it and help me understand it from your point of view. So that keeps
that's
you neutral.
really good. Yeah, that's an excellent tip there if you're having a conversation, because you do, particularly with an initial contact with someone, you want to avoid taking sides because there's no way you
Yeah,
can take sides. You just met this person, like you
right.
don't know, so you don't want to show yourself to be on one side or the other.
Mhm.
So all right, so personal conversations, positive tone, assuming the best. Um,
Mhm.
let's get to the second point. You mentioned before we got on air, as we were kind of doing our brief outline. We do so much prep for these episodes. Let me tell you,
Oh, so much prep. Mhm.
we like 5 minutes before airtime. What do you want to say? So yeah, you mentioned common mission. Explain. Okay, so we're talking about engaging the disengaged. What does common mission have to do with it?
Yeah, so okay, so some people are cognitive, they're brainy people, and they like to be engaged with the good preaching and deeper theology, and that's good, and I think churches should have those things. Other people, and probably the majority of people, they feel community, they feel connection around common experience or shared experience. The sad reality of churches is they've most have just boiled down to this idea of one lecture a week. We get together, that's the main thing. But a lot of times, if you can get people engaged through a project or through an experience, and so you're talking to this person, you find out they just really love yard work or something. That's a passion that they have, that kind of stuff. Say, hey, look, hey, we're having a work day on Saturday. I'd love to see you there. It'd be easy for you to be a part of that. Could you, in fact, would you come and oversee the mulch distribution around the campus? We've got several pallets coming. I think you'd be good at overseeing that. I've even before, when I've known people are disengaged, I asked the staff, I'm like, so what's something well, they used to do this for the church and they really liked it. And I would call them up and say, hey, can you come up and help us? We're painting these walls. I need some help on like picking the colors out, that kind of stuff. Once you get people ownership in the project, they'll plug right back in. A lot of times they just need something to be a part of. Now, obviously, I wouldn't turn over a Sunday school class to them. I wouldn't, make them chair
Yeah,
finance.
teaching roles, leadership roles,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
serving. Everyone should be serving. So getting
yeah.
people
And
reengaged
some
through
people are
serving is
just
great.
really great at it. So, yeah, that's what I would do there.
So one of the things that we've done very recently here at West Bradenton that has been wildly successful, and I love this, and it was the chairman of our deacons. It was his idea. So credit to Isaac. Isaac does not listen to these shows. I know that. So one of the things that we've done is our deacons partner with our students, and the students have service hours that are required of them for the school system. You have to do so many service hours to get graduated. So our deacons are now leading projects for widows in their homes. Mulching, yard work, painting, that sort of thing, and working with the students. And so we've re-engaged a lot of students by saying, hey, basically you need to get some service hours in. We're going to be out doing some work for 4 hours on, Saturday. Come be a part of it. So not only is it re-engaging students, it's also drawing people in, and the deacons are intermingling with the students as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we've
Yep.
got this great, several different good things that are happening, but it's all around your idea of like that common mission, and we get people engaged through serving.
Yeah. Yeah. Too often we're like, hey, show up. People are disengaged. Their minds are hurt. Their hearts are hurt. A lot of times, if you can engage their hands, give them something to do. So, and this is a great way to keep them from getting disengaged. Listen, Bible studies are great. I think we need good Bible studies. Sermon series are great. I think you need sermons. I think preaching of the Bible is a necessary part of a healthy church. However, I also think that work projects keep guys engaged. And that's something that you need to do more of. As many hands-on things as you can do, it keeps everybody engaged with the work. And they have buy-in, they have ownership. One of the biggest things that happens to larger churches is they lose ownership the more professional they go. The more you farm out everything, the more you have hired staff and outsourced services, nobody's engaged anymore because nobody's invested. And so invest where you can. That's a great way to engage the disengaged.
So let me ask you a question. If you happen to
Yeah.
have a head cold and your nose like is getting to the point where it's about to drip, it's so runny, and you're on
Mhm.
air and people can see you when you're on YouTube, what do you do,
Yeah.
Josh? Because I'm kind of in that situation right now. I keep sniffling, and I'm like,
I
I am
think,
about
yeah,
to have stuff come out of my nose, and like
I think
I'm
you
recording.
do. I think you do the same thing that I just did when my battery was about to die on my laptop. I just made the motion for you to keep talking and walked off and got my cable.
Yeah,
So you
if
can
you were
do the same
listening
thing.
and
Keep
you were like,
talking.
man, Sam kind of slow. If you were watching on YouTube, you saw it. But if you were listening, he's like, Sam kind of slowed his speech down a little bit there. Is he having like a
I could actually
stroke
hear
of
you.
sorts? No,
Yeah.
no. It was Josh King needed to get up, and I'm like, I don't know how long I should talk until I don't know what's going on. Is
Yeah.
he going to come back, or am I
I
going to
had
have to
my
finish the
battery on
show?
the thing. All right, I got one more here. I think this will help as well. And this is just good old fashioned patience. Keep ministering, keep praying, keep waiting. So people do this. I've seen it happen more times than I can count. They claim that you're their church. They were super engaged. Then they got disengaged. They got their feelings hurt. And one of the biggest or most compelling reasons for them to get back engaged is you didn't judge them, you didn't shun them, you kept praying for them. When you saw them out in public, you loved on them, you kept inviting them to everything. They expect. See, here's the way the human brain works, and I don't know the psychology behind it, but this is so often the case, and we've all experienced this. You get your feelings hurt, and then you're looking, you act out of your feelings, right? And then you're waiting for them to respond in some negative way. Then you use that negative response to then justify everything you have done and everything you're about to do. All right. And so you just hold on to that, even though that was a response to your initial negative action. So don't give it to them. Don't justify, don't feed. We talk all the time about what you celebrate, what you teach. That's the stuff that'll be repeated. And so sometimes people do things to get attention. Sometimes they do it out of their feelings. Sometimes they do it out of an immaturity. Sometimes they do it out of a life stage. If you're constantly responding to that stuff in negativity, and man, on all of these things, I've not been perfect. I've neither Sam, none of us are. But what I would just say is try your best to see the long ball game, that sometimes sheep wander off, and no shepherd should go, well, that I mean they went off. Who cares? That kind of stuff. I don't think there's any really good reason to shun a person for those kind of actions when they get disengaged, when they get their feelings hurt, especially if you know that their feelings are hurt. Now, I've seen people, I knew a guy one time that took over the personnel team and just just was a horrible person. There's times where you have to very firmly establish boundaries. And so I get that, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're just talking about the person who hasn't been coming a lot. I've seen pastors get all upset because they heard that person was now attending the church down the street. Now they're going to treat them like they're enemies. Well, according to your sermons and your theology, you actually agree with that church down the street. You're fine with that church. So why would you be mad at one of their new members just because they came from you? So I would just
Yeah,
say
and a
be a
lot
little
of
bit more
times
patient.
when you hear things, they're wrong. By the
Yeah.
time it
Oh,
gets
yeah.
back to you, there's more to the story, or the story has been completely flipped on its side. So I would just be really careful with people, and people who mean well. People are like, hey, pastor, you need to know. Well, what they're about to tell you has already gone through like 6 different people. And even the person
Mm,
telling you is like trying to do good, but at the same time, they've got the story wrong. They don't know they have the story wrong. So
yeah.
this is
Yeah.
why just keeping ministering, keep reaching out, call the person. Here, I always wait to hear straight from the source. You just can't make any assumptions until you hear
Hmm.
straight from the source. And man, in early in my ministry, when I was in my 20s as a pastor, I did these roll cleanups, which the churches need to do that. You don't need to have inflated rolls.
Yeah.
And regenerate church membership is an important thing, of course. I understand everyone's concept of church membership may be a little different, but you want people who are active in your church. And if they're not active, they don't need to be part of your church. So just just a little practical tip here. Don't be afraid to make the phone call. Don't be afraid just to reach out and say, "Hey, how you doing? How can I pray for your family? What's going on in your world right now?" And with somebody that you may not even know, but are on your list. The other thing that we do practically at West Bradenton is after a year of inactivity, we have the ability. We don't always do this, but we do have the ability just to take someone's membership status away, and that's kind of built into our bylaws. So obviously, we try to reach out to people. We don't just remove people from the rolls. But if we find a dead end, like just dead end after dead end, like, hey, we can't find this person, we have no idea what's going on, we really don't want them on our rolls, because sometimes your people do really dumb things and they get arrested, and then they say, well, I'm a member of such and such a church, and then you get the phone call and you're like, are they a member? And then you're in a real pickle because that person had been there in a while and you probably should have done something about it. But now you're stuck with this scandal because so-and-so has claimed that they're part of your church. So one, it's very important to keep ministering to people just because you don't want people to slip through the cracks. They will. It'll happen, but you want to minimize that. But if it comes to it, you also want the ability to say, they are not a member of my church. And you might have good reason for saying that.
Yeah, and I want to do a caveat here because if you're listening and you're a church leader, there's a way you could hear this where you feel guilty. Like, they left. They got their feelings hurt. They're off pouting. They're upset. That's the way that people can perceive that. And you're not wrong. I just want to say that. You're not wrong. And you've got all this stuff to do. You've got to still prep sermons. You still have to minister to the people that are there. You've got good... And a lot of times, if this goes too far, it's the squeaky wheel thing where pastors spending all of their time chasing down people who are just mean-spirited people anyways, instead of ministering to those who are, kind and gentle. So I'm not letting them off the hook. I think people who believe lies and spread rumors and gossip and get in little huddles and all decide they're not coming back because you're not doing special, one of them didn't get to sing the special music song anymore or something like that with their microphone, acting like they're a country music singer or something. Not to use a specific example. If that happens, then that's on them, man. I get that. But at the same time, you should just kind of let it go. Don't get all upset yourself about it. Be long-suffering with it. Have conversations. I've done that. I've called people up and said, let's get to lunch, knowing why they're upset. I know exactly what they're going to say. And then we have lunch. They say it. And, they don't come back. They still spread the gossip and stuff like that. But look, my conscience is clean. I reached out to them. I tried to make things right, tried to help them understand where they might be missing some things. So,
and I think those cases, those are more rare. That doesn't happen those are the ones you remember. Those are the ones you feel. But if you're talking about every disengaged person, that person that you just described, I mean, they exist. But I'd say it's pretty rare.
Yeah, most often what you're going to do, and this has been my experience as well, you call them up, you get lunch, then you see them. They come back, and then they come back a little bit more, and they're engaged. Especially if you're new to you'll have people all the time go, man, we haven't seen them in 2 years. We haven't seen them in 8 months, or they left during such and such. And they just got their feelings hurt, or they just got out of the habit. And that's unfortunate, but it happens. And so there's a real opportunity there to reach back out to those folks. And that's all we're trying to suggest here. We're not trying to lump any more guilt or like pastor guilt that you need to make sure no one ever leaves your church. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying, like, if you did somehow through a good church management software like Church Teams derive a list where these people, they need one more kind of reach out, one more email, one more call, one more just check in on them. it's not a bad practice, and it'll help kind of close that back door to your church.
Indeed. And that's about all the time we have for today's episode. So thank you, church teams. Again, est.church is where you can get that free offer. And, we've got a really good episode coming up next.
That's right.
Josh and I are driving to Indianapolis. Actually, I'm flying, but, we're going to make some comments about the Southern Baptist Convention. But that's in the next
Tune
episode.
in and see what we think is going to happen. Thank you so much for listening. Rate, review, subscribe. We'll catch you next week.